A very warm welcome. My name is John. I am the founder of TTK Life Strategies, where we help you to design the life you desire and deserve. I feel very honored today to be chatting to Ryan Erispe. Ryan and I met in October 2019 in northern Thailand when we became colleagues at a treatment center. And I discovered that Ryan and I we shared a lot of similarities with regards to our view on life in general, but in particular also our view on substance abuse treatment and recovery.
Okay.
So, tell us your story.
All right. So a bit about me. Born in Cape Town, in the Athlone area, um, in a place called the Cape Flats. I don't know how much people know about that, but it's a place that's kind of infamous in a lot of ways for drugs and gangsterism, and generally quite a bit of dysfunction in my own kind of family system. So, as with many people who struggle with addiction, I often find that there are some kind of adverse childhood experiences or trauma. I'm no exception. I had, in some senses, some difficulties growing up with parents and attachment issues, as I've come to understand them today, but not particularly worse or better than many other stories I've heard. So, I like to describe it as such, but maybe not as necessary to get into the finer details. The point of it was that I found it very difficult to attach to people, to trust people from a young age. That kind of message of you can't really depend on people. That kind of thing came through often um, in my younger years, and something that I've struggled with many years since then. In terms of myself outwardly, and I often say this to people, outwardly, you would have looked at me and said, "Wow, that looks like such a well-adjusted kid," I suppose. A lot of people would have thought, because I excelled at school, I excelled at sports, and I seem to have a lot of friends. So sometimes people are surprised when I say that I had difficulties, but my struggles were very much internal. Despite what was happening around me, I had a constant sense of discomfort, anxiety all the time about people leaving, about myself, about whether or not I was good enough, about whether or not people liked me. Um, I needed to excel at everything I did, because that was my way of sort of compensating for what really was a poor sense of self, um, and kind of fear and discomfort with me, is the best way that I could describe it. I didn't feel okay in my own skin, no matter how many kind of awards or compliments or that kind of thing, which came kind of thick and fast because I did well in many things. Um, it kind of never really fold what I now know to be kind of like a hole, that I describe, like a hole in the soul syndrome, if you will. Um, so I tried in many ways, through achievement, through friends, through relationships later on, and eventually substances, to kind of relieve myself from that discomfort, which worked um, in the beginning, as we know, and then kind of took me down fairly quickly. I mean, I I sort of used my first substance around 12 years old, um, and I quickly kind of, I suppose, um, became obsessed with using um, something or the other. I tried all of it, and within 2 years from then, I had, you know, uh, my life was pretty much a shambles already. From kind of a top student, um, sportsman, popular, all of those things, to being expelled from school, or being politely asked to leave, technically, um, and in a treatment center by the time I was 15 already. Um, so I didn't then finish high school. I went on to almost adopt the lifestyle of of the typical kind of drug user in some ways, because that was now my new social group, and I did pretty much everything that comes along with that. Um, the behavior, um, the crime, I suppose, violence in some ways, um, because that was, today I see it as because that was what was happening in that world, um, and I kind of loved, I immersed myself fully in that, um, and yeah, I took, from there it gets pretty dark, in terms of my behavior, my relationships with my family, my friends, sports, all the things that I valued before, um, gradually, um, some quicker than others, kind of fell by the wayside, and my life became entirely about finding the next thing to put inside myself, um, whether it was drugs, or again, alcohol, uh, female partners, sex, that kind of, and that became it. Um, so years went by. I had attempts to get clean. I had attempts to, my family would usher me off to a treatment center. I would reluctantly go, mainly to, I suppose, to placate the situation, and in some ways, and also to, I suppose, manipulate them into believing that that this is also what I wanted to do, um, so that I could get them off my back. Really, that was the point of that. But I didn't want to change, not because I enjoyed what I was doing, but because I could not see a possibility that I could go back to living with the discomfort that I felt. Discomfort sounds a bit like it's minimizing, but the pain that I felt with living without it. And I think that's something important that maybe people who don't suffer from addiction maybe fail to understand fully, um, is that, for me, again, I didn't want to do the things I was doing oftentimes. I didn't, it's just the thought of not having that was so frightening. The vision of a possibility of a life without it, for me, was just non-existent. People said it's possible. People said I did it back, when I just couldn't believe it. This thing that I was doing was oftentimes felt like the only thing that was getting me through the day. and there was no chance that I was going to believe anybody who said that it was possible without that. My thoughts were, you clearly don't understand how painful it is for me to live. Maybe I felt a bit like a victim, as some people would say, um, in the field. But that was what was going on for me. So it doesn't really matter what we call it. More matters that just what it was. So treatment center, after treatment center, people who know me know that story. They often make reference to how many treatment centers, but the point was that I just couldn't see it. Um, Again, it took me to losing kind of all my family in a sense. People loved me, but just from a distance. We love you, Ryan, but please do your thing away from us. Um, which I understand today was about preserving themselves from what was quite harmful behavior on my part. Um, because getting the next fix, because of it really mattered not at the very end what the consequences were to myself or in fact to anybody else. Um, whether it was taking something that belonged to someone else, something that was extremely valuable to them, not only in terms of money, but maybe sentiment. None of that, in my mind, nothing was more important than getting the next fix. Um, and naturally, people did not accept that. And in some ways, I'm quite glad that they didn't. And they said, enough. We've done the treatment thing. Please do your thing over there. And that's when things really became kind of hard for me. You often find me kind of wandering the streets. All of a sudden, where perhaps I could have, use some relationships and take advantage of them to gain some kind of money or to finance my addiction, I didn't have that. So now I had to resort to other things. I had to resort to taking things or doing things to people that didn't know me. Um, I slept in a part of Cape Town called Wynberg. It's also quite an infamous place um, for drugs and dealers and all that kind of thing. Um, you know, for a while it was in an electric box that, like a tiny electric box that had been gutted. So it was kind of empty. I could barely fit in there. That was my home for a long time. And I was very much the typical homeless drug addict that we all see every day. I think in most parts of especially in South Africa, you don't have to drive very far to see that. And that was me. I was that 100%, not any better or different. And I won't kind of, I won't make it any prettier than it was, because it wasn't. And the law, conflict with the law, often locked up more than once. Some time in the very well-known Portsmouth prison, and that is kind of that was definitely a bit of a wake up. Not enough of a wake up, because I did end up going back there again, and and from there going back on the street, and that happened for a little while, back and forth. And that's kind of the dark and the gory, and I know everyone has their story, but maybe for some people, it's important to hear that. I know for me it was, at least to hear some of what we refer to as the war stories. Um, Anyway, so my behavior had become completely obsessive. I was selfish to the point of not considering anybody else because I didn't have the capacity to. I had lost myself, and I was quite ready to kind of give up on life. I'd not. I didn't really have any hope of something being different for me. Um, I know that there had been for other people, but I was kind of okay if it didn't ever. And to be frank, if things had kind of, if I'd not survived, at that point I've kind of resigned myself. So probably like the darkest, deepest sense of hopelessness, that that you can imagine. Um, it was a nightmare. It was painful. It was lonely. It was often scary, the situations I found myself in. Um, and I remember when just before I finally kind of turned things around, um, just before that happened, someone had reached out to me, someone that was a friend of the family, or who had who had some help that they wanted to offer me, in terms of putting me in yet another center. Um, I I accepted it. I accepted it and I went. Not because I had some kind of magical awakening of hope or anything like that. Um, I thought that it was cold outside, and that I'd been to treatment centers. I knew that it would probably be a nice one with a cozy bed and some and a on-site chef, and those were the things that really attracted me to going in the first place. And I thought it would give me a bit of relief from the life that I'd created for myself. Um, anyway, I accepted that, and kind of, despite myself and my intentions, things kind of started happening for me over there. Yeah, I think by that time, why did things change there? I think that I'd been stripped of maybe any delusions that I had about using and about being able to control it, or what have you. Um, and really, I thought, what's the worst that could happen? All right, everything that possibly happened could have happened had by that point. I thought, let me just try this nonsense that the people are talking about, that they've been going on for years about, and I did. I gave it a go, and I thought, I'm going to give it really a real go. And then when it doesn't work, inevitably, I can, sort of with more ease accept my fate, and everybody else can also just leave me alone. Um, so I did, but obviously it didn't turn out quite like that. I had some good support. I had some good help, some good therapists, um, a mentor. There was a few people involved in kind of allowing me to feel some sense of hope that maybe this was possible for me as well. Um, and after being there for about 3 months, it was I'll never forget this part. It was my time to leave the center. They kept me there as long as they possibly can. And they didn't have any way to send me. They they couldn't just put me outside in my bags. And obviously, I'd made relationships with everybody there, and I'd become sort of part of the fold in a lot of ways. And he kind of couldn't put me out. And the owner, who I remain extremely grateful for, kind of helped me in. He said, I have a place, go and stay there for a little bit, come and help us out in the center to kind of earn your keep, that kind of thing. That's what happened. And I'd become by that point a bit passionate about the program, about the 12 steps, about following spiritual principles, and I wanted to share that with other people. So I was grateful for the chance. I operated as a kind of support worker there. I enrolled in a counseling course, or I was helped to enroll in a counseling course, I should say. And as I was doing that, I started training, helping out clients, and kind of the story goes from there. So that kind of unfolded from there. I thought I'd started to believe strongly that this could, that if this works so well, and I need to spread the message, I need to be there for people. And I got a lot of compliments from other people who work. They said, what, Ryan, you really have something. Clients find it valuable. We want to send you on a course. And then gradually I moved from a trainee to a counselor after a year. I was almost 2 years clean by then. And then I kind of grew in that center to eventually being kind of senior management after a few years. But since then, I've been constantly studying, as you know. I'm still doing that. I started my own aftercare counseling center, which I got an opportunity to work in the Seychelles after that, where I was the senior counselor and helped with developing the program for the government of the Seychelles, at a government organization called APDAR. After working there, I then went to Thailand, where I met yourself, and where I also had the position of head counselor over there, and also managed the counseling team. So that's kind of been my role for a long time. It's what I thrive in doing. And the kind of final step is today, where I've come back to South Africa, and I've kind of realized a long-term dream. There was myself and my fiance, who is also a therapist. We have now opened our own center here in Port Elizabeth.
If anybody who listened to you would like to learn more about you or your treatment center, where can they get a hold of you, or how can they get a hold of you?
We're on Facebook at Birchwood Addiction Recovery. We're also on Instagram at the Birchwood House. Our website, www.thebirchwood.co.za. And my email is ryan@thebirchwood.co.za.